Blind date gone wrong. The CEO met his late wife's twin sister without knowing she existed. Would you please meet my daddy today? It's actually a blind date. The classroom was bathed in golden light as the sun dipped behind the trees outside. Lily Grace, the new teacher who had joined the preschool just 2 months ago, was quietly tidying up the room. Her blonde hair, softly curled, shimmered in the late afternoon sunlight as she closed the final window. She hummed softly, lost in her thoughts. A tug on her sleeve startled her. "Miss Lily," a small voice chimed. It was Emma, the bright-eyed girl in a pink dress with pigtails bouncing on each side of her head. Her eyes sparkled with a mischievous excitement. "I need you to do something really important for me." Lily crouched down to meet her gaze, smiling gently. "What's going on, sweetheart?" Emma leaned closer, cupping her hands like she was about to share a world-changing secret. "I want you to meet my daddy today, kind of like a blind date." Lily blinked, caught off guard. "A blind date? With who, honey?" "With my daddy, of course." Emma giggled. "He's really nice, but super lonely. And I think he needs someone kind like you. I told the driver not to come today. I made Daddy promise to pick me up himself." Lily's jaw dropped slightly. "Emma, sweetie, you planned this all on your own?" Emma nodded earnestly, her hands now folded over her chest. "It's just like meeting a parent, not a real date. Just talk to him for 5 minutes, please. Don't tell him I set it up." Lily was momentarily stunned. She had never met Emma's father. Every pickup and message had gone through assistants or the driver. Still, Lily couldn't help but feel a soft spot for Emma. The little girl was unusually thoughtful for her age, always trying to bring people together. "All right," Lily sighed, smiling. "Just 5 minutes, and it'll be our little secret, okay?" Emma beamed, holding up a pinky. "Secret blind date." Front gate, late afternoon. Ethan Blake stepped out of his black SUV, rolling the cuffs of his crisp white shirt as he glanced down at his phone. A single unread message lit up the screen. "Please pick me up, Daddy. I have a surprise. Don't be late." He exhaled sharply, already anticipating another one of Emma's curious adventures. She had his heart, and he had promised. He would always show up when she needed him. As he walked toward the school, his expression was stern, businesslike. But it shifted the moment the classroom door opened, and Emma came running into his arms. "Daddy," she squealed. Come, I want you to meet someone." He followed her into the room with mild confusion. Then, his feet halted at the threshold. There, standing by the reading nook with a gentle smile, was a woman with soft blonde curls and warm, curious eyes. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He stared. She looked exactly like Grace. The air thinned. The colors around him seemed to blur. Why do you have my wife's face?" he asked, his voice barely audible, almost broken. Lily's smile faltered. She stepped back slightly, confused. I'm sorry? I think you must be mistaken." Ethan blinked rapidly, trying to regain composure, to ground himself back to the moment. He wasn't seeing a ghost, and yet, he could not look away. Emma, oblivious to the tension, tugged on Lily's hand and then her father's. "I just wanted you two to talk. She's really nice, Daddy. She makes me laugh." There was a long pause. Ethan cleared his throat, quickly smoothing over the storm in his chest. "Thank you, Miss Lily. Is it? It's nice to finally meet you." Lily gave a small nod. "Likewise, Mr. Blake." There was nothing more to say, at least not yet. Ethan turned to Emma, brushing her hair back gently. "Let's go home, kiddo." As they walked away, Lily stood silently by the door, her fingers gripping the strap of her bag. Her heart was pounding for reasons she couldn't quite explain. From behind the corner window, Emma peeked back at Lily, grinning proudly to herself. "Blind date started," she whispered. Night settled heavily over the city, yet Ethan Blake remained wide awake, seated in his study with the lights dimmed low. He had not touched the stack of photo albums in years, but tonight, he opened them one by one, his fingers tracing the faces of memories he had tried for so long to keep buried. Grace stared back at him from every page, her eyes bright, her smile effortless. But now, layered upon every image was the face of another woman, Lily. The resemblance was uncanny, too precise to dismiss as mere coincidence. It was not just her face or the color of her hair. It was the stillness in her presence, the calm in her voice, the gentle way she moved around children. He set one photo aside and picked up another, Grace holding baby Emma in a sunlit garden. Next to it, on his phone, he pulled up a recent picture taken at school, where Lily crouched beside Emma, tying her shoe with the same soft expression. The ache in his chest deepened. He could not shake the feeling that the past was somehow stepping back into his life. He turned to his laptop and opened Lily's staff profile again, something he had glanced at briefly when she first joined the academy. He scanned the lines slowly this time. Place of origin, unknown. Raised at Hope House Orphanage. Parental status, not available. The name of the orphanage leapt out at him, Hope House. A chill ran through his spine. Grace had once spoken of a place with that same name, but she had never offered details. She had only ever hinted at faint memories, shadows, a shared laugh in the dark, dreams about a sister whose face she could never recall. Meanwhile, across town, Lily lay wide-eyed in her small bedroom. Mason had drifted to sleep beside her after asking too many questions she could not quite answer. The man from school, Emma's father, had stared at her with eyes full of something close to disbelief. It had left her unsettled. Once the apartment was still, she reached for the old tin box beneath her bed and pulled out the single photograph she kept hidden. It was creased and yellowing, taken decades ago in the yard of the orphanage. She was just a toddler then, standing beside another girl with the same blonde hair, the same slight build. But the other girl's face had been torn away. Only a jagged corner remained. The back of the photo bore a faded pencil inscription, G and L, 1991. She had asked once, years ago, if she might have had a sibling. One of the staff had shrugged and said it was possible. We get siblings sometimes. They don't always stay together. Lily had spent her entire life brushing off that notion. She told herself the dream of a twin was childish fantasy. But tonight, after the way Ethan had looked at her, like he was seeing someone long gone, those old questions clawed their way back. She held the photo under the light and studied her own face, then the outline of the girl beside her. Could it be that she had a sister and somehow crossed paths with her family, all these years later? Back in his study, Ethan leaned back, lost in thought. Grace's words echoed in his memory. One of those rare, fragile moments when she let him see beneath her composed exterior. Sometimes, she had whispered, I dream of a little girl who looks like me. I think she's my sister, but she's always too far away to reach. He never thought much of it then. Now, it felt like a thread had been pulled loose, and the entire fabric of his past was unraveling. He glanced back at Lily's file, his heart pounding. Hope House. He didn't know what to believe yet, but the pieces were aligning in ways that could no longer be ignored. And across the city, Lily sat motionless with the photo in her lap, the sound of Mason's breathing in the background. The questions swirling inside her had no answers yet, but she could feel it. Whatever had begun in that classroom wasn't over. Not even close. The sun was already high by the time Ethan pulled into the park's gravel lot. He double-checked the message on his phone. Emma had been unusually persistent about their weekend plans. A picnic, just the two of them, no exceptions. But as soon as he stepped onto the grass, he spotted two figures approaching, one small, in a pink dress, the other unmistakably familiar. Lily. She looked as surprised as he felt. Mason walked beside her, clutching a little paper bag with a juice box poking out. Emma ran up to her father, smiling wide. "Daddy, surprise. We all get to eat together," she beamed, as if nothing about this situation was unplanned. Ethan cast a questioning look at Lily. She gave a soft shrug, her smile apologetic. "She said you knew. I suppose we've both been outsmarted." He sighed, then let the tension go. "She's persistent," he said, setting the blanket down. "I should have known something was up when she packed grapes for 4. They settled on the grass, Lily and Mason on one side, Ethan and Emma on the other. At first, the air was filled with polite comments and careful silences. Ethan kept stealing glances at Lily, trying not to get caught. The resemblance still knocked the air out of him, but it was different now. He was starting to see her for who she was, not Grace, but someone steady and warm in her own way. As the children played nearby, laughter broke the stiffness between them. Mason had an infectious giggle. Emma, never one to miss a chance for theatrics, began a pretend tea party with dandelion petals and leaf cookies. It didn't take long before Lily and Ethan found themselves smiling at the same moments, even finishing each other's thoughts when talking about their kids' quirks. Ethan watched her, listening as she recounted bedtime routines and grocery store tantrums. "He used to be terrified of the dark," she said softly, looking at Mason with affection. "Every night, I'd place my hand on his chest and count. 1, 2, 3, you are not alone. After that, he'd fall right asleep." There was something comforting about hearing her speak that way. An ease, an understanding only someone who'd walked the same path could carry. Then came the bee. It hovered above the fruit bowl, zigzagging lazily in the warm air. Mason stiffened, eyes wide, already starting to breathe fast. Lily noticed immediately. She reached over, gently touched her forehead to his, and whispered, "Brave boys don't swat, they breathe." Ethan's entire body froze. The words struck him like lightning, soft and slow, but burning through everything. Grace used to say that exact sentence to Emma during thunderstorms, her voice a calming lull in chaos. The tone, the cadence, it was identical. He turned his head sharply, blinking hard. His throat tightened, and for a moment, he had to look away. Lily didn't notice. She was too focused on calming her son, who was already giggling again as Emma offered him a cookie. The rest of the afternoon drifted by more gently. The awkwardness was gone, replaced by a fragile, quiet connection that neither of them could name. When the sun began to dip, they packed up slowly. No one wanted to be the first to say goodbye. In the car, Emma curled up in the back seat, tired from play. She leaned her head against Ethan's shoulder and murmured sleepily, "Daddy, can Miss Lily be your friend too? Like Mason is mine?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, catching a final glimpse of Lily walking hand in hand with her son. The breeze lifted her hair gently. She glanced back, just once, before continuing toward the lot. He didn't know what to call the feeling settling in his chest. It was not confusion anymore. It was something heavier, something deeper. Maybe Emma had been right all along. Maybe she wasn't trying to bring a stranger into their lives. Maybe she was bringing someone back. The cafe sat on a quiet corner near the school, tucked behind a row of flower shops. Ethan had suggested the place, neutral, cozy, with just enough distance from everything familiar. Lily had hesitated when he invited her, unsure of what this meeting was meant to be. But curiosity had won out. They sat near a window, the golden afternoon light slipping through the blinds and casting shadows on their table. Lily wrapped her hands around a cup of chamomile tea, while Ethan stirred his coffee slowly, watching the steam rise. At first, the conversation stayed safely within the bounds of parenting. Ethan asked about Emma's progress, her recent art projects. Lily smiled as she described Emma's storytelling skills, how the little girl would often narrate entire fairy tales with her own dramatic twists. She told the class last week that her mom lives in the stars and sends her dreams every night, Lily said softly. Ethan looked away for a moment, his jaw tightening. That sounds like Grace, he murmured. She always believed in magic. The name hung between them for a moment, invisible but heavy. Lily took a sip of tea, then glanced out the window before speaking again. I never knew my parents, she said. I grew up at Hope House Orphanage, moved from one foster home to another until I was 13. Ethan turned sharply. Hope House? She nodded. In Vermont. It's been closed for years now, but I remember it like it was yesterday. Something shifted in his posture. He leaned forward slightly. Did they ever tell you anything about your family? Only once, Lily replied, a touch of something unreadable in her voice. There was a woman who volunteered there. She said I might have had a twin, but no one could confirm it. I thought maybe she was just trying to make me feel special. She reached into her bag and pulled out her wallet. From one of the flaps, she unfolded a faded photo, creased and worn. She laid it carefully on the table. It showed a little girl, blonde, with large eyes and a solemn expression, standing beside another child whose face had been torn away by a jagged tear. This is me, Lily said. The girl next to me, I always wondered who she was. The back says, G&L, 1991. Ethan's breath caught in his chest. Grace had told him stories about strange dreams she had as a child, of holding someone's hand she couldn't see. She once said she had a feeling, a persistent tug in her chest, like she had lost something before she could even remember having it. I don't know why I still carry this, Lily continued, tucking the photo back into her wallet. Maybe part of me always hoped I'd find out who she was. Ethan's voice was quiet, almost cautious. Have you ever looked into it? She shook her head. No. Life gets busy, and honestly, I was afraid of being disappointed. When they parted ways outside the cafe, Ethan waited until Lily turned the corner and disappeared from view. Then he pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he scrolled through the school's digital records. He opened Lily's staff file, scanning quickly. And there it was. Background: orphaned. Raised at Hope House Orphanage. No record of biological family. His heart pounded. The photo, the initials, the timelines, they all fit, too closely. That night, back at home, he unlocked the chest at the foot of his bed, the one where he kept all the memories he wasn't ready to let go of. Grace's letters, her childhood journals, photographs. He dug through them with trembling hands, searching, hoping, fearing, and then he found it. A faded photo of a young Grace, standing beside a little girl. Not Grace's cousin, not a friend, someone she never identified. The other girl looked exactly like Lily. He sat back on his heels, breath stolen, staring at the two halves of a mystery that had waited decades to be solved. Something deep inside him shifted, not just because of the resemblance, but because now, Lily's presence wasn't just a strange coincidence. It might be a key to everything Grace had left behind. That night, Ethan sat alone in the soft glow of a desk lamp. Around him, scattered across the table, were fragments of a life he had carefully stored away. Old photo albums, birthday cards, hospital records. But his hands trembled as he held one photograph in particular, a faded picture of Grace as a child, her arm draped around another little girl. The second girl's face was hauntingly familiar. He pulled the wallet-sized photo Lily had shown him from his pocket. The tear in her picture aligned perfectly with the jagged edge of the one in his hand. When placed side by side, the two halves became whole again. Grace and Lily, identical in every detail. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. The initials on the back, G&L, 1991, weren't just a coincidence. Grace and Lily. They had to be twins. He opened his laptop and drafted a quick email to Martin Walsh, an old friend who had once worked in the state foster care archives. He attached the reconstructed photo and a request. Can you verify if either of these girls were in the Hope House system? Any records? Anything. But even as he waited, he couldn't sit still. His mind was a whirlpool, memories of Grace colliding with his growing affection for Lily. It wasn't just the resemblance anymore. It was her kindness, her quiet resilience, the way she listened without judgment, and the way Emma lit up around her. He walked down the hall and stood outside his daughter's room. Through the cracked door, he watched her sleep, curled around her stuffed bear. Peaceful. What if Lily was her aunt, her only remaining blood relative? He pulled out his phone again and called the family physician. "I need a discreet DNA comparison," he said, "between Emma and her teacher, Lily Grace. Do it quietly. I'll send the samples." The doctor didn't question it. Back in her own apartment, Lily sat in the dim light of her living room, her arms wrapped around her knees. Mason had fallen asleep hours ago, but her mind wouldn't let her rest. Her fingers traced the edges of the torn photo again, now reunited with its missing half thanks to Ethan's careful attention. On the back, faint ink lines had begun to fade with time. She squinted under the light. GNL 1991. She remembered the way the volunteer at Hope House once smiled at her and said, "You look like you were born a twin," but she had brushed it off. Twins did not get separated, not in real life. Not unless something had gone wrong. Unless someone had made a choice to split them. Her stomach twisted. The rational part of her mind tried to calm the rising tide of dread, but something inside her, something deep and long buried, had already begun to awaken. It was not just about Ethan anymore. It was about who she was, and why, for the first time in her life, being near someone made her feel like she was standing on the edge of a memory she had never made. She placed the photo down on her nightstand and turned off the light, but sleep never came. Somewhere in the quiet of the night, Ethan sat in his study, the photos side by side under the lamp. He whispered into the silence, "If it's true, then everything changes." Rain traced delicate trails down the windowpane of Lily's apartment as she stacked Mason's bedtime books neatly on the shelf. The storm outside echoed the quiet chaos in her heart. Something had shifted in the days since her conversation with Ethan. He had grown more silent, more deliberate. She had sensed a weight behind his eyes, as though he was holding back something too big to speak aloud. A knock came at the door, measured, not urgent. She opened it to find Ethan standing there, hair damp from the rain, a sealed envelope in his hand. His eyes met hers. "May I come in?" She nodded, stepping aside. He said nothing at first, just walked slowly into the living room, where the muted light softened the tension clinging to his frame. He handed her the envelope. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, pulling out a sheet of paper lined with clinical data, numbers she could barely read. But the heading stopped, her breath cold. Genetic Relationship Report. Emma Blake and Lily Grace. Below it, the words stared back at her. Probability of full sibling relationship, 99.98%. Her knees gave way, and she sank onto the edge of the couch. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Ethan lowered himself to one knee in front of her, voice barely above a whisper. "You're her twin, Lily. You and Grace, your sisters. Identical." Lily stared at the report in her hands, eyes glassy. "She was real," she whispered. "She wasn't just a dream, or a shadow in a broken photo. She existed. She was my sister." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks without resistance. But it wasn't grief, at least not the kind she had known. It was something older, more complicated, a grief for time lost, for memories never made. She pressed a hand over her mouth, struggling to breathe. "If I'm her sister, then what does that make me in your life?" Her voice cracked. "If I am part of her, am I just a ghost you're trying to hold on to?" Ethan shook his head. "You are not her shadow, Lily. You're not her replacement. You're the part of her that lived on through you, but you are also your own light." He reached for her hand, gently. "You're the first person who's made me feel like I wasn't drowning in the past. You brought me back." At that moment, A small voice called from the hallway. "Daddy?" Emma appeared in her pink pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Why are you here?" Ethan opened his arms, and she ran to him, curling against his side. She looked up at Lily. "Do I really have a auntie?" Lily blinked, fresh tears rising. She knelt down to Emma's level. "Yes, sweetheart," she said softly. "You do. I'm your auntie. For real." Emma threw her arms around Lily's neck. "Yay! Now I have two mommies in heaven and earth." The innocence of the embrace, the pure joy in Emma's voice, it broke something open in Lily. The confusion, the fear, the guilt, it didn't vanish, but it softened under the warmth of a child's acceptance. She looked over Emma's shoulder at Ethan. He didn't say anything, but his eyes said it all. No labels, no pressure, just family, however unexpected. In the background, the rain began to ease, as if even the storm had paused to let them breathe. Lily didn't return to class that week. She had sent in a formal request for leave, citing personal reasons. No one questioned her. But behind that quiet decision was a storm she couldn't silence. The truth had landed like a tidal wave, washing away every certainty she thought she had. She wasn't just Lily Grace, a young mother and kindergarten teacher. She was the sister of a woman she'd never met. Grace, Ethan's late wife, was her twin, and Ethan, he was Grace's husband, the father of her niece. How could any of this make sense now? At night, she sat by Mason's bed, watching her son sleep, safe and unaware. She pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the soft rise and fall, but her own breath caught in her throat. If Grace were still alive, she whispered into the dark, what would she think of me? That was the question that tormented her. Not Ethan's feelings, not Emma's innocent affection, but her own conscience. It wasn't jealousy or doubt. It was a bone-deep fear of betraying someone whose face she wore, someone who came first. A knock at the door broke the silence. She hesitated, then slowly opened it. Ethan stood there. No umbrella. Rain clung to his coat, soaked his hair. He didn't bring flowers. He didn't say her name like a plea. He just stood there, with a look that wasn't desperate, just honest. "I'm not here to make this harder," he said softly. "I just need to give you something." From inside his coat, he pulled out a sealed envelope. Carefully preserved, the handwriting on the front read, "To Ethan, for when you need to remember how to live again." He handed it to her. "She wrote it before the accident. She never gave it to me. I found it months later. I never had the courage to open it until last night." Lily looked down at the letter in her hands. Her fingertips trembled. "I'll go now," he said, turning. But she spoke before he could leave. "Wait." She opened the letter. It was Grace's handwriting, slanted, gentle, full of life. "If she's out there, my sister, I hope she finds you. And I hope you let her in. Don't close your heart to love again, especially if it's someone who could remind you of how it all began." Lily's knees buckled. She sat down on the steps. Ethan stayed still, silent. Tears slid down her cheeks, not from heartbreak, but from the weight of knowing. Grace hadn't just left a memory, she left a blessing. And yet, even then, the conflict inside her didn't vanish. "I don't know if I can ever stop feeling like I'm in her shadow," she whispered. Ethan stepped forward, kneeling to her level, not too close, just near enough. "You're not in her shadow, Lily. You're her light, what she never knew she lost. But I don't love you because you're her. I love you because you left when you needed to. Because you stayed quiet when you could have fought. Because you let my daughter feel safe again." Their eyes met. No kiss followed, no embrace, just silence and a shared understanding. Rain continued to fall around them, but neither moved. Inside the apartment, Mason stirred. In the hallway, Lily and Ethan didn't make promises. They didn't talk about the future. They only held each other's gaze a moment longer before she spoke. Not today, but maybe one day. And Ethan nodded. That was enough. 1 year later, the mornings were quieter. Not silent. There was always the soft chatter of children, the clink of spoons against mugs, the sound of a kettle beginning to boil, but quieter in the way peace is. Lily stood in the kitchen wearing a light blue oversized shirt. It belonged to Ethan. She didn't even think about it anymore. Her hair was tied loosely, and she moved barefoot over the tiles, pouring hot water into 2 cups. The scent of chamomile filled the air. In the living room, Ethan sat on the couch, a book resting open in his hands, but his eyes occasionally drifting, not to the words, but toward the kitchen. At the coffee table, Emma and Mason were sprawled on the floor, coloring with markers, their voices rising in bursts of laughter. It wasn't a fairy tale. There was no sparkling engagement ring, no wedding photos hung on the wall. There were no titles, no boyfriend, no stepmother, no new beginning announcements. Just 4 people, existing in the same space, sharing tea and mornings, and small, warm silences. Lily brought Ethan a cup. He looked up and smiled, not out of habit, but because he still meant it. She handed him the tea without a word, and their fingers brushed just for a second. He didn't say thank you. She didn't need him to. She sat beside him, curling her legs underneath her. They watched the children without speaking. Their bodies gently leaned toward one another in a way that didn't need defining. There had been no grand declarations, no sweeping, cinematic moments, but there had been healing. There had been a letter from a sister she'd never met that still sat, folded and worn, in Lily's bedside drawer. There had been quiet understanding, small steps, slow trust. There had been the first evening she stayed for dinner. Then, a weekend. Then, mornings like this. A soft breeze moved the kitchen curtain. From somewhere inside her, the words came. They weren't spoken aloud, but, if they had been, they would have sounded like this. I still don't know if this is right by the world's standards. I still don't know what to call us, but I know what it feels like. Peace. If you're watching, Grace, I promise I'll take care of him. Of her. Of both of them. Not because I owe you, but because I love them. Because I'm here. The camera would pull back, if this were a film, out through the kitchen window, past the potted plants and the smudged glass painted with kid-sized fingerprints. 4 people. No one quite replacing anyone else. No labels to define them. But something real. Something whole in its own quiet way. No perfect picture. Just a real one. A man who had once lost everything. A woman who never thought she belonged anywhere. 2 children who laughed louder now than they ever had before. The kettle clicked off in the background. Lily looked at Ethan. He looked back. Neither said it, but both knew. They were home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness and Love Tales. We believe love isn't always loud. It's often found in the quiet moments, the small gestures, and the families we build in unexpected ways. From blind dates to lifelong bonds, we bring you heartfelt stories that heal, inspire, and remind us what truly matters. Hit that subscribe button and join our community where love always finds a way.